The sutta has a very short name here, Pārileyya Sutta. That is the Pārileyya Discourse. Pārileyya is the name of the elephant, actually, or the name of the forest where the elephant lives. Pārileyya, sometimes also called Pārileyyaka. This is somewhere outside Kosambī. Kosambī is to the far west of where the Buddha lived in the central Gangetic plain, Ganges plain in northern India. It's far west. That means there are lots of Brahmins there. It's borderlands away from the Savatthi and so on. Understandably, the monks there are quite difficult. They are quite quarrelsome, in fact. So the story of the monks of Kosambī is quite notorious, quite well known. It's recorded in the Vinaya, chapter 10 of what's called the mahā. Mahā actually is the first chapter, the historical chapter, tells us the story of the Buddha and the early Sangha. Chapter, in this case, it's volume 5. Although in terms of the Pali arrangement is the first volume. The what do you call that? When you look at the volumes on the shelf, Mahā usually is put first. But the Pali, traditional Pali, is volume 5. So you see in your notes, it says volume 5, page 337 to 357 in your notes. So the story says that in the 10th year of the public ministry, 10th year, that means you count from the rains retreat. Or you can include the rains retreat. For example, when we say the first year, that means that from the time the Buddha awakened until the first rains retreat, and then after that also regarded as first year. So it's a bit kind of, the dates are not exact like ours, not exactly calendar dates. So these are lunar dates. So anyway, the story went that there was these two groups of monks, those who specialize in Vinaya and those who study the Dhamma. So this is the 10th year, so you can imagine by the 10 years have passed, as how the many monks the Buddha has been teaching. So apparently the story was that these monks, they quarreled. One group, or one of the monks, did not use the water in the toilet. Small, very small thing, but they started quarreling. They say, well, they blame each other, So to cut the long story short, they, instead of settling the matter peacefully, they were arguing and so on. The Buddha was told about this. The Buddha came to quell the quarrel, to get the monks to get together again. The Buddha gave them many teachings, many Jataka stories, but sadly these monks were arrogant and very proud. They came to the point where even though the Buddha tried to teach them 3 times at least, they actually told the Buddha off. It said something like, okay, this doesn't concern you, this is our matter, something like that, So once it comes to that kind of situation, the Buddha decides to go on his own and leave them alone. So this is a story about how the difficulties of being a teacher, and how even the Buddha faced lots of difficulties and how he dealt with it, right? So here we see what's interesting is even especially in the early Sangha, there is no use of higher authority. The Buddha is not in the position of authority, of power, except in a sense you can say spiritual power, if you like. But we don't call this power. It's more like education. It's like learning. Later on, the monks learn that they have strayed from the path. They have broken the rules. They have quarreled. Because when they're quarreling, they are overcome by the 3 negative roots, the 3 unwholesome roots, by greed, hate, delusion, of course, other things like pride, also arrogance and conceit also have come in. Because once we overcome by any of the roots, many other negative emotions will come in. Right? So the sutta is about that situation, and so the Buddha went away. All right. So this is let's look at what happened when the Buddha goes away. Where did he go? What did he do? So he goes to the forest of Pārileyya. All right, so let's go down to the sutta now. Okay, here we are, Pārileyya Sutta, the discourse at Pārileyya or Pārileyyaka forest. Now notice this is found in Samyutta, chapter 22, Sutta 81. All right. Thus have I heard, at one time the Blessed One was staying in Ghosit'ārāma's park near Kosambī. So this quarrel occurred in this park outside Kosambī, built by the treasurer Ghosit'ārāma. There were four monasteries in around Kosambī at that time, and modern archaeologists have uncovered the remains of these monasteries. So we do know that there were monasteries there. These archaeological finds also means the Buddha really existed. He was not a mythical figure, right? Right, so the Buddha was in this Ghosit'ārāma's park outside Kosambī. Then in the morning, the Blessed One, having dressed himself and taking his robe and bowl, entered Kosambī for alms. Then the Blessed One, having gone for his alms round and finished his meal of alms food, set his lodging in order himself, took his bowl and robe, and without informing any of his personal attendants, without taking leave of the community of monks, set out on a tour without any companion. This is a very dramatic beginning. I don't think we have come across this kind of introduction before. Now, first of all, I already told you this story comes from the 10th year of the Buddha's ministry. Ananda became the Buddha's personal attendant in the 25th year, right? So at this point, the Buddha does not have any regular personal attendant. That is why the sutta here mentioned plural, personal attendants, right? So the Buddha was still young, probably 30 something, maybe early 40s, yeah? Still young and healthy and strong. So the story here begins with the Buddha goes on his normal alms round, taking his food, and then after that, he himself quietly pack up his things in his kuti, in his cell, put everything in order. This is a typical way monks behave. All monks do this, so you don't see the monks' kuti very messy or anything like that. So everything is in order, and then he quietly leaves for Pārileyya forest without a companion. See, usually he will have someone. It's called a pacha-samana. Pacha-samana, a monk attending monk, a monk who follows him. Pacha means behind, following. So he goes alone. So notice in this case, the Buddha is ready to go on his own if he needs to. So he's that kind of teacher. There is no higher authority in the sense of a committee or some kind of showing his power, threatening people with punishment and so on. No such thing. Very peaceful, right? He packs up and goes away. So when these monks are quarrelsome, they say they don't need him, okay, fine. So he goes away. Verse 3 or paragraph 3. Then not long after the Blessed One had departed, a certain monk approached the Venerable Ananda and said this. So this monk, we're not sure who it is, noticed the Buddha missing because there was no Dharma teaching. So this monk tells, Ananda was still there, but he's not the personal attendant, okay? Friend Ananda, or Awuso in this case, the Blessed One has set his lodging in order himself, taken his bowl and robe, and without informing any of his personal attendants, without taking leave of the community of monks, set out on a tour alone without a companion. Right, so this monk noticed. So he goes to the Buddha's kuti and notice, oh, the Buddha has left, right? So he's not sure what has happened. So Ananda at that time is one of the senior monks, not yet an arahat, he's probably a streamer already. So they tell him, right? So here Ananda knows. Ananda explains to this monk and also explains to us in verse 4. Friend, Avuso, whenever the Blessed One sets out like that, he wishes to dwell alone. On such an occasion, the Blessed One should not be followed by anyone. Right. So we have Ananda here acting like a commentator. He's the sort of narrator, if you like. He tells us what's going on. He gives us the background. Okay, so Ananda acts in this way. So you see all this early Buddhist literature, they have this kind of arrangement to help us understand the suttas better. Right? So the Buddha doesn't want anyone to follow him. All right. Then now the sutta narrator comes back. We do not know who the sutta narrator is. Of course, you can say it's Ananda again during the first council, like telling us the background story. Then the Blessed One, wandering by stages, meaning he goes as far as he can go, and it's not too hot, and it takes his rest. Maybe the day has ended and rested, and then next morning went on alms round, and so on. So he goes at that on his own. Then the Blessed One, wandering by stages, eventually arrive in Pārileyya or Pārileyyaka, that's the forest. The Blessed One stayed at the foot of an auspicious sal tree in Pārileyyaka. All right, auspicious here means it's a really huge and old tree. It's probably the oldest tree there, the biggest tree there, so it's said to be auspicious, and it's very shady. However, if you have seen a sal tree, you will notice that it doesn't have much shade, much leaves. It's big, yeah. So the weather must be good at that time for the Buddha to stay in the open like that. Okay, so these are things we should bear in mind. Okay, so the Buddha lived by himself in the forest. Okay, some interesting things are going to happen. Let's find out what now. Because living in the forest, in a sense, is more exciting than in the city. You'll be surprised in a good way. No? Okay, 6. So then now we are back in the monastery. And then a number of monks approached the Venerable Ananda and exchanged greetings with him. Okay, so now we have other monks. Well, they may or may not have known the Buddha has left. Probably the first monk could have told them. So now they come. They're very concerned, a bit worried. These are the good monks. So they come and ask Ananda. So when this courteous and friendly exchange was concluded, they sat down at one side. Seated thus at one side, they, meaning here the concerned monks who came to see Ananda, they said this to the Venerable Ananda. Friend Ananda, Avuso Ananda, it has been a long time since we heard a Dhamma talk before the Blessed One. We would like to hear such a talk, friend Ananda. Now here, a long time could mean just a few days, because usually in the monastery situation, the Buddha would give Dhamma talks every day, but here maybe a few days have passed. So these monks really miss the Buddha. They say, wow, the Buddha's not talked for quite a number of days, and that's a long time. So then the Venerable Ananda, together with these monks, approached the Blessed One at the foot of the auspicious sal tree in Pārileyyaka. Having approached the Blessed One, they saluted him and then sat down at one side. Okay, I'm sure some of you are surprised. Oops, there's a change in atmosphere here. They actually went to see the Buddha, right? So here I want you to use your imagination. Now, earlier on, there is that verse which says the Buddha cleared his room and arranged everything, and then he went away. And then Ananda said, oh, okay. Ananda tells the monk, that single monk, says, this means the Buddha has gone away, doesn't want to be disturbed. Now, we do not know how long this was. It could be 3 months. Probably it was during the rains retreat that the Buddha spent this. According to the commentary, the Buddha spent 3 months by himself in the forest. Now, who took care of him in the forest? This is very interesting. Of course, the Buddha would go by himself, go out for the alms round, quietly alone. Alone is not too bad. Okay, if the monks go as a group, yeah, it's going to be problematic because the ground is muddy and wet, and they will destroy tiny lives and so on. But the Buddha is very careful when he walks. So the Buddha lived by himself, and he was sitting alone by himself under this tree. The story goes that there was this big elephant, okay, called a naga. Naga means the bull elephant. And this elephant also is not too happy with the crowd. It's got many other female elephants who like him and go rubbing him, and so he just wants to be alone. He also he's thinking of renouncing a bit, if you like, as far as elephants go. So he was wandering alone by himself, and he sees the Buddha sitting alone. And, elephants are very intelligent animals, we have 2 cats in the house, and we treat the cats very well. We talk to them. We treat them like members of the family. So you find, especially the female cat, she behaves almost human, all right, like a human. She comes to me at different times of the day, and I don't know how she knows a fixed time. Between 9 and 10, she will call me. Is it time for your sutta work? And then at night, around midnight, she'll come. It's midnight, time for you to rest, and so on. And in between the different times, she knows the time, right? So what I notice is when you treat animals well, they also treat you well, and you begin to see human qualities in them. This is something that amazes me. Even when Rana and I, we were at the Jurong Lake Gardens. Sometimes we have this amazing behavior of animals. For example, once I was sitting in the pavilion, and then there was this noise, there was a noise in the water, and there was this nice and big otter swimming up and down in the water, just there, plain to see. We rarely see this, but there is this otter, and then after it goes away. All right, so you get this kind of situation, and very often we get these birds, the water hen, they also will come to us. Of course, they normally are interested in food, but they have learned not to fear us. So what I'm trying to say here is, when we are nice to all these animals, they're also nice to us. So this elephant is even far more intelligent than other animals. So you notice the Buddha sitting all alone there, and watches what the Buddha is doing, the Buddha's daily habits. And you notice the Buddha boils water and then washes himself, drinks water, uses water to wash his feet. So he quietly came, took the bowl, collect water for the Buddha, water for drinking, water for washing. And the Dhammapada commentary says something very interesting. This elephant prepared warm water for the Buddha to wash, for the Buddha to bathe in, actually. How did he do this? This is one of the most amazing stories in the Dhammapada commentary. You see, there is this rock. There is this depression in the rock. So it is like a bath, okay? There's a hole in the rock. So he collects water bit by bit, okay? And he pours his water into this depression in the rock. And then he uses his trunk and his foot. And then he puts his foot on the small stick, and then the other stick, the lighter stick, if you like, the other stick, he uses it to rub the other stick to make fire, all right? Either that, another way is to use flint, okay? You can use flint and then start a fire also. Anyway, he's intelligent elephant, so he started a small fire and then build it up. And then he used another stick and started rolling stones, round stones, into this fire that is blazing. And when the stone became heated, he rolled the stone away into the depression in the rock. So that's how he built up this warm water. And once the water is warm enough, he tests with the tip of his trunk. He knows warm. He comes to the Buddha and pulls the Buddha by the hem of the Buddha's robe. Of course, the Buddha understands all this, you see, and meaning the water is ready for the Buddha to bathe and wash. So this goes on, day after day during the rains retreat. Now, at the same time, there was a monkey. Story goes there was a monkey also watching the elephant and the Buddha, and this monkey was very intelligent and very curious. And he also decided to do something. So he's not sure whether the Buddha would accept his gift or not. So the story goes that he went to get some honey. He got some honeycomb and he pushed away all the bees, and these monkeys, they know what to do. And he knocks it so that there are no living beings inside there. And then he got a banana leaf, brought it to the Buddha, and offered the Buddha some honey. Isn't that wonderful and intelligent and sweet, right? And he wonders whether the Buddha would take it or not. And the Buddha accepted it. And being a monkey, he couldn't contain his joy, so happy. And he jumped into the tree and started moving about the tree. But he was a bit careless. He missed one of the branches and he fell into a sharp stump on the ground and got killed, died right away. But because he did his good deed and he died so joyfully, he was reborn in the heaven of the 33 right away. So this is one of the stories where when I wrote this article on animals go to heaven, and so these animals, when they die happy, they are reborn in heaven of the 33. And I often use this kind of story. The many animals were reborn there, heaven of the 33. That is the second highest heaven in our universe. They become devas, So imagine if you take good care of these animals, you love them and they care for you, you notice that animals will love you. Imagine they're devas, they know you, they remember you, so they'll protect you and they somehow be around. And I don't know what to say here because, there are half a dozen stories in my life of near-death experiences. The most famous being, the most notorious being the one that I stood at the edge of the cliff and without knowing it, I just stopped. I could have, if I taken one more step, I would have fallen down the cliff and so on. So there are many stories like this where I could have, my life could have ended in so many kinds of accidents, but somehow I was safe, so to speak, right? And there was one of the first one was when I was very young. I don't think I told this to you all before. When I was a schoolboy, I used to follow my mother, visit my sister and the husband in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. And the mother-in-law drove us to Klang in this Jaguar car, and she drove very fast. And it was raining heavily, but she was still speeding. And in our return, another car came from the front, and the water splashed across the windscreen. And then the car went off the road and overturned a few times, and we were thrown out of the car. The amazing thing is, none of us were hurt. I was sitting at the back with my mother and one other person, I think, and the mother-in-law and another lady was sitting in front. She got stuck in the car, but I only remember I was thrown out of the car and landed on a patch of grass, and I got a slight lower backache. That's all. And then my mom got a bit of fracture on the wrist, and that's it. Despite this car overturning, and the car turned turtle actually later on. So that was one of the most dramatic near-death experience I had. And I don't remember anything. I just remember everything going black in the car, the water splashed on the car, and then everything went black. And when I came to, I was on the grass, and the car was some distance away. So how do I explain that? I don't know. I just leave it as something interesting. I can't say much more than that. So anyway, whether they're devas or not, they're there watching you. There are many stories in the Jatakas, in the commentaries, even in the suttas, showing these devas. They're like these divine busybodies watching you, making sure you're doing good things. So of course, if you're breaking the precepts, they will not be too happy with you. They will not be. I mean, they're like good friends, They see you doing good, they're happy. They see you not doing good, they won't be happy. So this is where you have this monkey being reborn in the heaven of the 33, not a very high level heaven, but they are still in communication with us. So you find this kind of stories. This monkey became a deva, and of course, it's very happy. You are taking care of the Buddha, and now we are back in the forest, and the Buddha sitting there and living his 3 months in the rains. And then here comes Ananda and the monks. So now, after the rains retreat, of course, the Buddha received them. So now we are back to this story of the Buddha in the forest. Let's look at the verse, where are we? 7, is it? Sutta does it one side. Oh no, sorry. We go on to. So now the Buddha talks to them. Okay. Verse 9. While they were seated thus, the Blessed One instructed, inspired, roused, and gladdened those monks with the Dhamma talk. Now at that time, a reflection arose in the mind of a certain monk thus. So notice here in verse 9, it's mentioned that the Buddha already taught them something. So the Buddha was teaching them some general stuff. And then during question time, there was one monk asked the Buddha, how should one know, how should one see so that there is immediate destruction of the mental influxes? So obviously this monk's not an arahat yet. So he's asking the Buddha, how do we quickly gain awakening? So this is asked, remember where? In the open air, in the Pārileyya forest, at the end of the rains retreat. All right. So, okay, I think this is just nice. I will stop here for a while. So now we come to the second part of the sutta, which is about the teachings by the Buddha. Now, in the teaching section, there are 2 main parts. In the first part, the Buddha gives a summary of all the Dhamma teachings. And then in the closing part, the Buddha answers the monk's question, how the monk can attain arahathood during the lifetime itself. All right. Okay, let's look at the sutta here. 11. The Blessed One, having known with his own mind the reflection in that monk's mind, addressed the monks thus. Now, notice here, this is not often mentioned, but here this is one of the rare times where the narrator tells us the Buddha reads the mind of the audience. So in other words, he wants to know, number one, the level of ability of the monks present at that time and what is suitable for them, right? So you notice they're quite new. And so he says, Bhikshus, this Dhamma has been taught by me in a way that discerns reality. So this is a very general statement. The Buddha, remember, when the Buddha teaches the monks, he's also addressing us right now, today. This is still up to date. This is why we cannot say early Buddhism is scientific. The simple reason is because science, one of the definition of science is that it must be falsifiable. Science, ironically, must be proven wrong, falsified. In other words, in Newton's time, he said, okay, this is a law of gravity, but today we say, okay, there's something wrong with that theory, now we upgrade it. So science always upgrading itself, science always improving itself. But Buddhism, early Buddhism, does not need improving itself, although other people tried to do that after the Buddha's time, so-called second turning, third turning. There's no wheel to turn after that. There's only one wheel, the Dhamma wheel, that's all, okay? So the Dhamma taught by the Buddha is to discern reality. So how else do you revise this? You either know reality or you don't, right? So the Buddha says, I'm teaching you so that you can discover, you can understand, you can realize true reality, what's out there, and to be free from suffering as a result. And what are the teachings? Okay, here now you come to this very interesting list. Next page. I've given the subtitle. That's one thing in the Sutta Discovery series. We give different lists here, and there are notes here you can read on your own. The suttas don't tell you, okay, these are the 7 sets, but there are 7 things here, and scholars use the term 7 sets, 7 sets of teaching. So in other words, if you ask yourself, what are the key teachings of the Buddha? The answer is this set of 7 teachings. So look at the number first of all. You got 4, 4, 4, 5, 5, 7, 8. All right, so those are magical numbers. And here you have the Pali words. Chatu Satipatthana. Chatu means 4. Satipatthana. Chatu 4 again. Samapadana. We'll find out the meaning later. Chatu Iddhipada. And here Pancha meaning 5. Pancha, the apostrophe here is A, Pancha, Indriya, but it pronounces Panchindriya. So easy flow on the mouth. Pancha Bala. Okay, Pancha Indriya, 5 faculties. Pancha Bala, 5 powers. Sata means 7. Bojanga. Arya Atangika Magga. Atta means 8. Noble, Arya noble, Atta 8. Angika means factored, 8-factored path, Magga path, right? So now I won't go into details because they're notes here you can read on your own for your own understanding. So the Buddha said, okay, these are the teachings I've given. Number 1, the 4 focuses of mindfulness have been taught by me in a way that discerns reality. So you can practice this 4 satipatthanas to awaken, right? Now, as you know, the 4 satipatthana begins with the body. So your body-based meditation, and then feeling-based meditation, and mind-based meditation. And the last one, Dharma-based or reality-based meditation, right? So that is one set. You can follow that. Or you can follow number 2, the right striving, right? Padana means striving, effort. Look at the 4 right efforts. Basically, the 4 right effort. The first is effort is, if you're not done anything bad, keep it that way. So that's the effort of non-effort. Number 2 is, if you've done something bad, let's say smoking or drinking, then you stop doing that. Okay. And so these 2 are the effort to overcome negativity, not to do evil, avoiding unwholesome states, right? The first 2 efforts. Then the second 2 efforts are promoting the good, promoting wholesome actions. In other words, if there's a good thing you have not done, let's say meditation, keeping precepts, then you do that. And once you have started doing this good thing, you maintain it. You keep on doing it. So these are the 2 good efforts. So 2 efforts to cut down bad, 2 efforts to promote good. So altogether, therefore, they're called 4 right striving. So these are 4. Of course, you notice you can practice these 2 together. No? And then the third teaching is called the path of success. Right? So Iddhipada, this has to do with meditation also. First, Iddhipada is the will to act, the determination, chanda. And then you make the effort to practice it. That's number 2. Okay. And number 3 is you direct your mind to do just that. In other words, you to focus your mind and practicing mindfulness and samadhi and so on. And then 4 is investigation. You look at what's going on in your mind and reflect on it. Something like vipassana, if you like. So those are, and this will bring you success in your practice. And then you have the 5 spiritual faculties. Okay, notice Pali, Panchindriya, right? Now, Indriya has got another sense also. It means the 5 senses, no? The 5 physical senses, eye, ear, nose, tongue, body. Okay, but here it refers to your the things you must have when you for successful meditation. First, faith, right? You got to have faith in yourself, especially that you can meditate, you can build up all this wisdom yourself. And you also have faith in the 3 jewels to help you. And this faith moves you to effort. You make the effort. You don't just say, I believe, but you do it. You practice mindfulness, you practice meditation. And you concentrate your mind. That is number 3 is mindfulness, right? You direct your mind properly, mindfulness. Number 4 is concentration. Then your mind is focus. Your mind attain various states of maybe jhana if you work hard. Yeah? And then the last is wisdom, number 5. Okay? Here, wisdom refers to some kind of understanding of impermanence and so on. So here you notice faith must be balanced with wisdom, all right? And then effort must be balanced with concentration. And in the middle, you have mindfulness. So you imagine 5 things. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Middle is mindfulness. And then faith is opposite is wisdom. Effort opposite concentration. So this is a balanced practice. You can look up the notes. They give you details, right? The 5 faculties. Then the five powers. These are those of the arahats. They already awakened, so their normal faculties, they already become very strong powers in the arahats. And then you have the 7 awakening factors. Usually, this 7 awakening factors go with the 4 focuses on mindfulness, right? So here you start off again with the practice of mindfulness. Number 1. Number 2, investigation of states. In other words, you watch what's going on in your mind. And number 3, you've gone putting in the effort to meditate, to investigate. And then as a result, joy arises. This joy brings you peace of mind, which is number 5, tranquility, body at peace, mind at peace. And this brings you concentration, number 6. And with concentration comes equanimity, peace of mind, focus, jhana, and so on. So this 7 is the progress of your meditation. So this is another set to help you understand the nature of your practice. And then, of course, the most famous of the set is the Noble Eightfold Path, right? As you all know, right view, right thought. That's the first pair or first set. And you have right speech, right action, right livelihood. This is the morality aspect. Right. And then the last one, right effort, right mindfulness. Right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration. Okay, this is the meditation aspect. All right, so you have the 3 trainings here. So what the Buddha is giving the summary of his teaching. 7 kinds of teachings, 7 sets of teachings, and you will total up 4 plus 4 plus 4 plus 5 plus 5 plus 7 plus 8. You get the 30. You got a total of how many? 37 awakening factors. So they call the 37 bojangas, Sambojanga. Okay. Bojanga, body plus anga, awakening factors. So in other words, these are the practices you can choose. Now in the second part, the Buddha says, okay, how do we practice for awakening in this life itself? Well, bhikshus, in regard to the Dhamma that has been taught by me in a way that discerns reality, a reflection arose in the mind of a certain monk. Thus, how should we know? How should one see so that there is immediate destruction of mental influxes? So the Buddha repeats the question and says, okay, this is how, to answer this question, this is how we do it. Okay, now the Buddha comes to a new idea. This is a bit more specialized, a bit more deep. All right. Form. Let's go further down. Form and self. All right. So now the Buddha is teaching about non-self. You want the quick way, practice non-self. So he's teaching the monks this. Of course, for lay people, if you focus on non-self, it also helps you if you have with some help with your previous training and learning the suttas. You can also study, reflect on non-self. And here is the teaching, 14. Notice there is brackets 1, brackets 2. So, and then 3, 4. There are 5 altogether. Here, bhikshus, the untutored ordinary person who is not a seer of the noble ones, who is unskilled in the Dhamma of the Aryas, noble ones, undisciplined in the Dhamma of the Aryas. Aryas are the 4 kinds of saints. Who is not a seer of the true persons, and these are those who are practicing the Dhamma, but not yet fully awakened, who was unskilled in the Dhamma of the true persons and undisciplined in the Dhamma of the true persons, consider form as self. All right. Now, this first 4 lines simply means those who do not respect the monks and the followers of the Buddha, and they don't practice the teachings, they consider form as self. They see form, for example, the body, or one of the senses, seeing, hearing, whatever, to be the self. That consideration, bhikshu, is a formation. So this is just an idea, a mental construct. We all create ourselves. That formation, what is its source? What is its origin? From what is it born and produced? When the untutored ordinary person is touched by a feeling born of contact, connected with ignorance, craving arises. From there is born formation. Okay, in just these 2 lines, the Buddha gives quite a deep teaching here. That's why we have sutta classes like this to explain to you. So this idea, this formation, this mental construction, seeing the body or form as the self, arises from feeling born of contact. Contact here means the sense contact. Eye sees an object, there is eye consciousness, contact. Contact here means sense impression, sense experience. So when we experience seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, of course, thinking also included, but it's based on ignorance, then we conclude, say, oh, this is the self, right? My mind is the self, or what I see is the self, and so on. So this is how this idea of the self arises. So notice the Buddha is beginning with the teachings that we should renounce first. The Buddha said this is one wrong view, self-view. Then there is this refrain, this part which the Buddha repeats, thus bhikshus, that formation is impermanent, condition, dependently arisen. All these ideas we have, they change, everything changes. They are conditioned by a lot of things, and they arise through condition. They never exist in themselves, right? So this is repeated. Craving is impermanent, condition, dependently arisen. Feeling is impermanent, condition, dependently arisen. Contact is impermanent, condition, dependently arisen. Ignorance is impermanent, condition, dependently arisen. When one knows and sees the bhikshus, there is the immediate destruction of mental influxes. So if you can see this immediately, you awaken. So here, this is a short version of the dependent arising, right? Here, formation from ideas. From the ideas, craving arises. When there's craving, there's feeling. And because of feeling, we notice whatever we experience, we create ideas with it. And all this is rooted in ignorance. You can start with ignorance and go upwards also can. It's another way of looking at it, how This is a short dependent arising. There are how many? 5 factors here, 5 limbs. No? So formation arises from ignorance. That's how we are putting it. So the first view is form as the self. Form equals self. This is based on the eternalist idea, right? I'm sorry. This is the opposite one. The Ucheda Ditti. Ucheda means annihilationist. The body is the self. So when body dies, the self also dies. The self also ends. So this is based on the materialist view, right? Most modern people today have this belief. They say, oh, this is our only life. So when the body dies, that's the end. Okay, so this is the one way of understanding it, right? Now, the next one is 17. Eh? So everything is the same here, so I'm not going to read the details. We just read the key idea, the self as possessing form. Now, these ideas are a little deep, so I'm going to summarize for you. And in your free time, you'll go back and read 4.2.2 or 4.2. The section gives you some details and lots of references for you to follow. So the second idea of self-view is that self as possessing form. The example here is like a tree. The tree has a shadow, okay? So the form here is like the shadow of the tree. They're connected in that way, tree, shadow. So this one is reflects the eternal soul of the God religions. And this is the very common idea today, especially among the God religions. So this is second wrong view. Some people think that way. They think, oh, we have this God-created soul. Like the tree has got a shadow. So this is our shadow, so to speak, this soul, right? It's always there with us eternally. So our body will die, but this soul doesn't die. To the materialist, the soul also dies when the body dies, right? But in this case, body dies, but the soul goes to heaven or go to hell, depending if you are not a believer, right? All right, so this is the second view. Okay, so notice I put the brackets here, all right? All right, so let's go down further. Let's look at brackets 3. Okay, here you see 18 brackets 3. Everything repeats itself, right? However, you might not consider form as self. So here the Buddha say, okay, this person may not consider the second view, right? That form as the self. He might not consider the self as possessing form, but then he may have this third way of thinking. He thinks that form is in the self. Form is in the self. This is like a flower has got fragrance, a smell. The smell is in the flower, all right? So this one is the Brahmanical idea that there is a universal soul, and we are just a spark of the universal soul. This Upanishadic view. So this is the Vedas, they believe, the Brahmins, the Hindus, they believe this. So again, it's a wrong view. The Buddha said, all this arose from ignorance. So ignorance is contact, feeling, craving, formations. These are constructed ideas. We try to see life as based on a soul, a self here. You can, instead of self, you can say form as in the soul, right? Which is a wrong view, by the way. So this is the wrong view. Now, the fourth wrong view is this person thinks that the self is in the form. Okay, the self is in the form. This is like the Patisambhidamagga says it's like a jewel is in the casket, the jewel box. Right? There's a jewel in the box. Right? So here, today, this idea is reflected in the disembodied soul. This would be the typical belief of the superstitious religious Chinese person. Most ethnic people, okay, they will believe this. There is a disembodied soul. In other words, for example, they may tell you, oh, you know, when you're sleeping, this soul can travel around. So it's travel around, so we have dreams and so on. So they have this idea, a soul that can leave our body. All right, so this is a popular animistic soul belief today among people who are superstitious. So you have these 4 kinds of soul belief. All right, and the Buddha summarizes all this. See, the fact that the Buddha knows all these 4 and summarizes them is amazing. And for us to understand what he's trying to say is really quite deep, right? I know most of you do not know what I just said, but please go back, revise, look at section 4.2. You see everything there with lots of examples and cross-references. All right. So let's see what the Buddha has to say now. Basically, do not fall into the idea of the self or soul. Okay. Further down, however, he might not consider form as self. He might not consider self as possessing form. He might not consider form as the self. He might not consider self as informed. In other words, it may not have all those 4 ideas. Then further down, go down, come on. So notice all these are each of the 4, the 5 aggregates now I use. All right. So instead of form, he may think that the soul is in feelings. Maybe it's not in the body, but he say, oh, maybe the feeling is the soul, right? And everything's repeated here, the 4 kinds of ideas of the self. Maybe it is feeling. The soul is in the feeling. The self is in the feeling, our feelings. No? Some of them may not believe this. They say, oh, it's our perception, how we perceive things, our memory, recognition, that's our soul, right? So this is another kind of idea. And here, some people may say, oh, it's the way we act, our intentions, formations, okay? That's the soul, right? And the 4 kinds here. Right? And some is, okay, the very famous one is consciousness. Some will say, oh, it's the soul is our consciousness, you know? So you have the 5 aggregates: form, feeling, perception, formation, consciousness. Now you have 4 here, right? 4 kinds of beliefs. 4 times 5, you get 20 kinds of self-views. So we let go of this self-identity view. This is called self-identity view. You identify with this. Because these are the kind of views that will prevent you from ever reaching the path. Prevent you from becoming a stream winner, right? So the Buddha again reminds us, that consideration bhikshu is a formation, right? And then the Buddha tells us how this formation arises, right? Through the dependent arising. Okay, go up some more. Up, please. Yeah. Right. So here everything is repeated. The Buddha say, all these are conditioned, they're impermanent. And so the eternalists, notice here, here the eternalist view. The person may not consider the form, feeling, perception, formation, or consciousness as the self, but he holds such a view. The self is the world. Having passed away, I shall be permanent, stable, eternal, and not subject to change. Right? So he may not regard any of the 5 aggregates as the self, but he may say, oh, it's the world, the universe itself. This is very close to the Brahmanical idea, by the way. Right? So there are actually 6 ways, 5 aggregates plus this idea that the world is our self, the soul. Okay, further down. Right, so then there are those who do not consider the 5 aggregates, form, feeling, perception, formation, consciousness, or even the world as the self. Right, so further down, but 26.3, but he holds such a view. I might not be, and there might not be mine. I will not be, there will not be mine. So everything is no, 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 okay? So this is the annihilationist view. Nothing exists, right? So that's my belief, right? So this, again, is a wrong view, that nothing exists. Because even this idea is impermanent, mind-made, and so on, rising from ignorance. Okay, further down. So another person, he may not consider any of the 5 aggregates here to be the self. he may not have this view about eternalism or the other one, annihilationism, but then he might hold such a view as this. So he says, okay, I don't know all these things, whether I'll be or not be, and so on. So he is uncertain, doubtful, indecisive concerning the true Dharma. So this one is, I don't know anything, right? I'm not bothered with it. So this is uncertainty, doubt, indecision with regard to the true Dharma is a formation. So this idea of I don't know, I don't care, also is a view, the reason from ignorance, right? So everything's repeated here. The Buddha say all these are mind-made and they're not very helpful. Okay. Further down, we reached the end already. So the Buddha says all these views prevent us from becoming awakened. They are mind-made, and they won't help us to reach the path. So in order to reach the path, we should, number one, understand that there is no self. There is only arising and passing away of things, and use one of the 7 teachings to clear the mind so that the mind can see true reality. And that way you will attain Arahatut, awakening in this life itself, if not at least stream winning in this life itself. Now, very often in my teachings, I try to simplify what the Buddha has taught by saying that as lay Buddhists especially, we should focus on reflecting on impermanence. And if you keep on doing that, then you will reach the path. I'm reflecting the teaching of the Anicca Cakku Sutta. In fact, any of the 10 suttas of the Okanta or Okanti Sangyutta as 25. Sangyutta chapter 25, right? Then someone told me that we also should note that all our actions have repercussions. They have fruition and so on. That also is true. Okay, the Buddha did not mention this in that sutta, so I did not mention it. But that is understood that our actions also have the karma behind it. So that also should be known. So basically, to simplify it, we reflect on impermanence so that we understand the nature of non-self. When you understand the nature of non-self, then you begin to understand nature of karma also, that then you find there's nothing to desire. So if you have nothing to desire, you won't break the precepts. Then if you have nothing to desire, nothing to hate, right? So that way you won't be deluded. So it becomes a kind of a package deal, practice of the Dhamma, when you reflect on non-self. Well, I hope I've given you some ideas to think about. Some are a bit deep, some are easy. So let's start where you are and then read up the notes. And of course, now it's question time. You can ask a question related to this study or related to Buddhism. Okay, question time now.
Thank you, Piya. Now I'll pass the session to
Sutta.
Thank you, Sister Ratna and Brother Piya. Dear brothers and sisters, now you can type your question in the chat box, or you can unmute yourself to ask your question verbally now. Thank you. Brother Piya, at the moment, there's no question in the chat box.
Okay. Yeah, sure. Okay. Just give them time to think. Okay, so while you're thinking, let me just say something about our latest book, SD 60.1E. So you got 60.1 A, B, C, D, E. That's 5 volumes. This is from last year. Now, last year, 2022, you have volume SD 61 A, B, C, D. So the 4 volumes to celebrate 20 years of our full-time sutta work and teaching. And many proofreaders help us with those volumes. At first, I thought only 1 or 2 volumes. I ended up with 5 volumes. Actually, there'll be 6 volumes. Now, the first 5 volumes are actually all introduction to the last one. I hope I will complete the 6th volume. The 6th volume will deal with various issues in modern meditation. How psychology have noticed problems arising from meditation. So there's a very interesting area which has not been updated. So I'm going to summarize all these discoveries by modern scientists, modern psychologists on the problems people face, like breakdowns, hallucinations, whatever, even simple things like distractions, how they occur, how we deal with them. So the first 5 volumes will tell you all the background, the various teachers and teachings, and the last one is the discoveries by the modern psychologists, psychotherapists, meditation teachers, and so on. And we have quite a number of people helping us proofreading, and those who proofread also know that while they proofread, they're learning a lot of things. And all these things, I'm amazed myself that there's so much I could write. So I'm putting together all my 50 years of learning Dharma plus all these modern teachings. So in fact, for this volume, the volume E, 60E, I already updated some over 70 proofs. So each of you have entered in, you get 1 proof per week or every 2 weeks. So I've updated them all. So now I'm waiting for the rest to come in slowly. So I update them, and then right now, so helping. And I've already completed volume E, but it is still draft. We still need to check, especially cross-references and so on. But of course, those of you who would like to book a volume, your free volume, just let us know, right? You can contact us on Telegram or Facebook. And those proofreaders, we really eagerly wait your feedback so that we can update these volumes so that they have the least typos and so on. So in other words, you have to raise the quality of the publication, right? Okay, any questions yet at this point?
Not yet, Brother Piya.
Okay, you got 20
yeah.
minutes. 20 minutes, you can still ask.
Brother Piya, there's a question from Brother J.H. Kaur.
Okay.
Brother Piya, on the refrains, what do it serve in this sutta? How to understand them in this context? Thank you.
Okay, refrains are always, you can say, the teaching that applies to all the rest. You're reminded, okay, this is what you have to do, right? So now let me just read to you the refrain. Refrain says, for example, thus bhikshus, that formation is impermanent, condition, dependently arisen. So here the Buddha is saying, remember, all these ideas we have, they are mind-made and they will change. Now, just look at yourself now, okay? A few years ago, when you first became a Buddhist, you had a certain idea. Then over time, that idea changes. And then you go into meditation, you listen to suttas, and your ideas change again. This is the meaning of the parable of the water snake. You hold a snake, you see this dangerous snake, catch it by the neck. So learn the Dharma also properly in this way. Because the Dharma can end up as a water snake, can bite us and cause us confusion, And then we throw away the snake as far away as possible. And this is rather odd, You don't find any other religion where the teachers will tell you this. You got to let go of that Dharma also. What is the Dharma? The Dharma is our opinions, right? We don't have the Dharma right now because we are not awakened. We have opinions, views of the Dharma. A view means like a postcard. We take photograph of a mountain, but the mountain got many sides. So we have to let go of the present view when we understand better next time. For example, in this sutta, you learn something, then you find you got to revise some old ideas. That's how we grow, by letting go of old ideas, opinions, and then we have new ones. And then later on, we improve this one. That is why it is rather childish to take a firm stand and start arguing, oh, this is the only view, and start telling our friends on Facebook or wherever we are, they are wrong, and people start fighting. Imagine they have not met each other on Facebook, they already started quarreling and not talking to each other, and they're already attacking other teachers and so on. So it wouldn't be very helpful that way. All right. So it means we will keep on changing our views. We keep growing. And the next line says that craving is impermanent, conditioned, dependently arisen. We all have desires, likes and dislikes. All these are mind-made, they're impermanent, they change. Same thing with feelings. Feelings arise from what we like, what we don't like. All these are also conditioned, they change. In other words, they are not forever, right? And then contact, how we experience things, what we see, hear, smell, taste, touch, and think. All these are mind-made, conditioned, they change. And all these are rooted in ignorance. So we slowly let go of ignorance as we learn. That's how we overcome ignorance. So this refrain is important by reminding us what the teaching is really about. So refrain is that telling us this is what's about. Just like when you sing a song, you got this chorus. It's the same thing. Yeah. Okay. Good question. Huh?
Yeah, thank you, Brother Piya. Okay, there's no question at the moment.
All right. Any other question that has troubled you related to the Dhamma, your practice? 15 minutes more. Meantime, Ratna can take a family photo. Okay. Okay, yeah, that's good. Show yourselves, please. All right, wonderful. Okay. Phyllis, are you there? And Vicky, Wing Sun. Okay, Ryan, is Ryan there? All right. Okay, right now, you're ready. Ratna. Oh, your
Wait, sorry. I
unmute,
didn't
yeah,
unmute
unmute yourself. Unmute yourself.
Yeah, okay. All right. Smile.
Mm.
Thank you. Okay, all
Mm.
taken. Thank you.
Okay. All right. The question time. Still have a bit of time.
You also can ask general question.
Mm. You know, these Sutta discovery books, they can be quite thick. This latest volume is 231 pages. In fact, I could go on some more, but I decided to stop so that we don't make it too thick. Dhamma books are such, you don't have to read them cover to cover, because usually we give up halfway, not even halfway, not even less than a third way we will give up. So what you should do is, one skillful means is look at the contents and see what interests you, what catches your eye. You start there. And then from there, you trace back, you read up. And then slowly as your understanding grows, you find you want to read more. And then you start from the start of the chapter. And you have a better idea what's going on. And then that's when you find that a book is really good, written by someone who practices the Dhamma. And that book is really worth reading right from the start. Because some books, they're very intellectual. They tell all kinds of stories, which are not really related to Dhamma or related to those people's lives. So you start where you see your interests, right? So don't feel that you must read the book cover to cover unless you have the inclination and the time, right? So same thing with the Sutta Discovery series. Look at the detailed contents and see what interests you. Start reading from there. And you find there are cross references that tell you things. And you find, okay, this chapter is not interesting. It's okay, go back, look again, see what other things interest you. Okay. For example, the early volumes, there are stories of the life of the meditating monks in Myanmar and Thailand. They tell you their background, what they practice, how they practice their teachings, and so on. And then another section tells you about some of the changes that went through in Myanmar and Thailand. Some new groups came up with their own ideas, and then what happened. And so we have a lot of very interesting new things that have happened with Buddhism in our time, in recent times. So I've summarized all this for you in this volume 60. So this is we have one more volume coming, probably Vesak. We will release it for Vesak this year, and after that, around this time, once we finish with the proofreading, I'll start working on volume F, the last volume, and then go back to Sutta translation. I really miss Sutta translation, right? We got some really good proofreaders this time, and you find that when you become a proofreader, you become wonderful Dhamma friends. We really learn from the Buddha. You're not learning from me, you're learning from the Buddha. We're working together. Any other question? Okay, I will just say a few more things while waiting. When we're studying the Dhamma together here, right? I don't see myself as a teacher to you. Of course, you can say the fact that I'm teaching you, I'm a teacher, that's fine. But there is this idea, traditional idea in religious circles, especially in Asia, that a teacher is someone very special, a person of power, attainment, and so on, who is supposed to help us, In other words, we push on all our responsibility to the teacher. And that's not the way that the Buddha teaches. And I think I'm not like that too. I should not be like that. At best, I'm sharing with you what I know of the suttas and trying to interest you. Your question also, it makes me learn also. Many of the questions people ask makes me learn. In fact, with proofreading, you find people give suggestions and I upgrade it. I learn new things. So we are learning together. Spiritual friendship on a normal level. We help each other learn. We take care of each other, like in the Sigala Vada Sutta. We look after each other. And that should be our attitude, not looking up to by level of position and power, but as friends in Dhamma. And then this is very important, right? Because the Buddha is our teacher. The Buddha is our one and only teacher. So we work together so that we can help each other make this journey more pleasant, faster in a way, and to stay to the correct path so that we reach the Noble Eightfold Path in this life itself. Okay, you got, yes?
Yeah, Brother Piya, there's another question from Brother J. Call.
Okay.
Again, on the refrain, how can one read from the key realities? Formation, craving, feeling, contact, and ignorance, and all the sequence. For example, why not Panchakanda? Thank you.
Panchakanda is already mentioned earlier. Panchakanda are what we are: form, feeling, perception, formation, consciousness. So in other words, some of us may take form, some see feeling, and so on as the self, right? So here, formation here means some mentally created, right? It's a specific meaning here, whereas the formation in the five gate is the bigger one, right? So here the Buddha is trying to show us all these ideas we have come from our own ignorance, not knowing. Then we depend on our sense contact. In other words, what we sense, what we see, hear, smell, taste, touch, and think. And then from there, when we have something pleasant, we like it, we say, oh, this must be it, And then we crave for it. We say, this is it. I like this teacher because he says things I like. See, so there's this liking, that's craving, right? And then we form ideas to say, see, I'm right because I've experienced this through my aggregates, and this teacher also says this. So we form this idea. This is the subtext of the refrain, right? So it is part of the whole teaching. What you do is you read through and then tell yourself, what do I understand now at this point? Sometimes we cannot understand right away everything. Then as we progress, next week maybe, next year maybe, 10 years time, things begin to fall more clearly in pattern, right? Now, we always have this bad habit of saying, oh, this teacher gave very clear explanation. Now I understand. They say, now they understand, right? But what do you understand? You're not awakened, even though you say you understand this. So everything is provisional. All that we are learning, as long as we are not awakened, is provisional. In other words, they are a step. We have just taken one step up. Okay, we got to keep on taking more steps. So some teachers may tell you the wrong things. There are many famous teachers who keep telling you the wrong things. They say, oh, the Buddha discovered jhana, but jhana was already there even before the Buddha. And some of them tell you, oh, you think during jhana and so on. Then we know very well they have not attained that stage. So we have lots of wrong views, but we still listen to them. We still practice because we're all traveling together. We know they're not awakened, but we help each other to walk together on the path. So remember, we're all not awakened. So because of that, we must allow this space of learning space. So that's the meaning here. We keep on fine-tuning, we keep on putting together the missing pieces, and then we get the bigger picture as we move along. So we must have a bit of humility here to learn the Dhamma. All right. Okay, 5 more minutes to go.
Thank you, Brother Piya. Brothers and sisters, if you have any questions, you can unmute and ask your question now. Thank you.
Right. 5 more minutes. Over the years, I've studied Buddhism. I've been telling you for the last 50 years. Sometimes people may say, oh, they like to try different things, so that they can understand life better, perhaps. Well, what do we mean when we say understand life better? But in the end, we grow old and we're left alone, and we look back, we wonder what have we learned, and we find that we have learned nothing. We have to understand ourselves. That's the main idea about Buddhism. What do you know about yourself? Your feelings, all these feelings that arise in you. How do you deal with them? Where do they come from? How do you have happy feelings? How do you have feelings that free you from fear, from ignorance? This is what learning early Buddhism has helped me. I started as a, traditional Buddhist with my parents, and then I went to the Buddhist temple, and then I went to Thailand to study with the monks, study Pali and Vinaya and Dhamma. And then I came back to Malaysia and then found that, wow, there's so many kinds of Buddhism. So I told myself, well, I need to learn them so that I can understand what you're talking about. So I studied Mahayana, studied Vajrayana, a bit of Zen and this and that. But after studying all that, I find that they all need early Buddhism. So, and there's so much to learn, 2,500 years of learning. Can you imagine how much that is there? So I decided to go back to study the early Buddhism, because everything is there. When you understand early Buddhism, you begin to understand what the other teachers are talking about, or the wrong path they have taken. So that is why I've been able to keep on working all these decades, and find the suttas so interesting. You feel joyful, and that joy keeps you going, curious, and you want to share that joy with others. It's not that I want to show you how much I know. It's the joy I want you to feel when you read those suttas and essays relating to the suttas. You don't have to read everything, but somewhere there is something that will make you joyful. And you'd be surprised what that is. And you see behind me now, all these books here, they all have different history. Like once in a while, I would say how grateful I am to the Penang Buddhist Association. They've given me, if you look at some of these volumes, these are photocopied volumes here. You have Samyutta here, Anguttara. Because there's when I was running courses in Penang, in the Penang Buddhist Association, and I told them I really like suttas. And then they say, oh, we have a set of the Pali canon, which we never use. In fact, they only remembered after I told them about it. And then they say, wow, we have kept this for so long. It's now have become brown and brittle. And there's only one thing we can do. We have to photocopy everything, because after that, all the pages will break up and fall apart. So what I have here is a photo image of those old books, which are about, I don't know, a century old, and they all have broken up, gone. It's no more there. So the Dharma, interestingly, has been transferred to me. And here you see behind me in our shelf in our Pali house in Singapore, these books. And I'm eternally grateful to the Penang Buddhist Association people for donating all these books with the black binding you see, from the Penang Buddhist Association. Okay, so this is the stories that have come to me that brings me a great joy to remember that people treasure the Dhamma. Okay, so that brings us to the time for us to rejoice the fact that we have created this wonderful gathering studying the Dhamma. Any urgent questions? No more, huh?
Teacher Piya,
Yes,
can
yes.
I ask this? Is the Four Noble Truths not included in the 7 sets of teaching?
That's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah,
So,
that's
yeah.
wondering. Thank
Okay,
you.
if you look at the 7 sets, where do you think you will fit in the Four Noble Truths? Well, you can fit in right view, right? In the Eightfold Path, isn't it? You see, that's the thing. Some people actually say the right view is a later formulation by the Buddha. Of course, by the Buddha himself. It's not included in the 37 factors of awakening. I think the reason why it's not listed here is because the Four Noble Truths underlie all these 37 factors of awakening, 37 wings of awakening. Because what do we realize when we do all these practices? We see ourselves, the mistakes we made, right? So we learn from the mistakes. Why? What is the mistake? We are suffering because of that. And why do we suffer? And then we find out the greed, hatred, delusion in us. And then we look for solutions, Third Noble Truth, and then we work on it. That is the Eightfold Path. So the Four Noble Truths underlies all the 7 sets. So there are many other teachings. 5 precepts also not mentioned, for example, right? But in other words, these are the key doctrines that we have to learn. Whereas the Four Noble Truths are the realization that comes with this. Okay? So that's one way of answering it. All right?
Sadhu.
Yeah, any other quick questions?
Brother Piya,
Yes, yes.
yeah, suddenly the question popped up in my mind because at the end of the sutta, there is no mention about the conclusions of the listener. There's no
Yeah.
conclusion.
Yeah, yeah.
But then this sutta is actually been asked by a specific monk,
yeah.
and the Buddha actually looked into the needs of this particular monk.
Yes, yeah.
So it's a bit surprising now. I mean, it just come out in my mind. Why is there no conclusion? For example, payment of the asking monk, because it was more like dedicated to him.
Yeah. Well, the conclusion is not defined by us. These are records that the monks themselves put together. It's not done by the Buddha. It's the monks who put together. There are many suttas which are missing. We don't have them, right? In fact, if you look at the Samyutta Nikaya, many of the suttas don't have endings at all. They are teachings. Because there's no ending because we are the ones who are going to give the ending to the sutta. The ending already finished for those arahats, for the people you read in the sutta, see? But you and I, we have to conclude the sutta. That is why one way of answering, there's no ending to the sutta. There are interesting endings. There's one sutta where the Buddha, where the narrator tells us the monks were not happy with what the Buddha said. Only one sutta. Anyone remember the sutta? The Buddha mentioned, their pride and so on, All right, it's in the Majjhima Nikaya. I want you to find out what the sutta is. So sometimes you get very interesting conclusions, okay? But in this case, there is no conclusion. It's open-ended because the Buddha is giving us teachings. That is the 7 sets. Okay? So when we can read up a bit the missing parts, especially on those 4 ideas about the self. They're very, very profound, very difficult to understand. So I'll try to summarize, simplify for you. So any other? No more. Final call.
Okay, I think we can end the session now. Yeah.
All right. Once again, let us calm ourselves to recall this wonderful moment. We will gather together. I'm always happy to see you all present, even though it's through the internet, through Zoom. It shows you have a deep interest in the Dhamma. It's always a joy to see people who share this deep interest. It makes our lives pleasant, happy. It increases our faith to know that others who also have faith. And we have done this before, and we are getting together again joyfully in the Dhamma, and we will meet again joyfully in the future. So this is a time, let us remember these wonderful practices we have done today, reciting the refuges and precepts, doing meditation, listening to the Dhamma, asking questions, listening to answers. For all these good deeds we have done, may each of you be well and happy. May I be well and happy, be at peace with ourselves, so that we live our life fully, joyfully in the Dhamma, coming closer to the Dhamma. This is the time to share your happy thoughts to your loved ones, your teachers, relatives, friends, even enemies, even those people who have problems with us. Wish them well and happy, so that they are happy to see us and be our friends through understanding. And above all, we show our gratitude to the 3 jewels for which we are gathered here every fortnight. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Buddhang Bhagavantang Abhivademi. Swakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami. Supatipanno Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.